So the last story brings me to this story. They're coming to take me away, which is a song. I used to have my dad's old 45 records, which were like, it's like the equivalent to a single, which was like a cassette thing that we had when I was younger. I'm old. Um, or you buy singles now. It's a single. Anyway, so this particular single, usually it was like one song on each side, and on this one it was the same song on the back, but it was backwards. It was just the whole song played backwards. But they're coming to take me away. So this is the song. They're coming to take me away, hee hee ha ha ho, to the funny farm where life is beautiful all the time, and I'll be happy to see those nice young men in their clean white coats, and they're coming to take me away, ha ha. Okay, so I loved that song when I was little. Sign of things to come? I don't know. Anyway, so what had happened was, at that time, I had told you I was in the grips of this addiction, but I wanted out. But what would happen is if I would go to detox, as soon as I started to feel better, I was out the door, back to the streets every time. I couldn't stop myself. So I would go in and say that I didn't feel safe and that I had an addiction and I needed help. And so they would put me in a lockdown facility, which meant that the psychiatrist had to decide when it was time for me to go. And my plan was, to be honest, that I can't go right away. You know what I mean? And then they'll keep me and then I'll stay and I'll have to get better, right? So I had done this and I ended up at this hospital, and there was this psychiatrist who really cared. It seemed like he really cared, and he really wanted to see me go on to further treatment. I had already been there a few times that year, and I was gung-ho, but then at the last minute I backed out. But I said, it's okay. Like, here's my friend Greg. He's gonna take me to meetings every day. And Greg owned the trap house we were hanging at. And Greg came and picked me up, and he even had a meeting with me, with my psychiatrist, about how we were gonna do great. He was gonna take me to meetings just because he knew I always made sure everybody was all set, and he let me stay there. He was all set if I was staying there. So then that happened and I got jumped, and it wasn't even right away, but it was whatever. A week or two later, I decided I wanted to go to detox. I wanted out of all of it. And I had just gotten beat up. I had stitches in my face still. My jaw had been broken. It was still all where all it's supposed to be white was blood red. And my eyes, raccoon eyes, just black eyes. It was like that for months. And I went in and like that after I had been there with my friend Greg saying that everything was going to be great. And then I showed up beaten to a pulp. And he was like, no, this time you're going to a place called the Tranquility Inn. It was a 30-day program. And it was a lockdown. And I knew that's what I needed. And I was all for it. I don't know how long I had been there. Maybe a week and a half, maybe 2 weeks. I don't know. And the next day, there was a bed open at the Tranquility Inn. And I was supposed to go the next day. And I asked one of the girls if she'd been there. And she said yes. And I asked if they had barbed wire. And she said yes. And we didn't have barbed wire at the hospital I was in at that time. So it was about an 18-foot high chain link fence with no barbed wire at the top. And they took us out for cigarette breaks at certain times every day. And our last cigarette break was like 10 o'clock every night, right? Into this little fenced-in area. And like I said, the fence was probably about 18 feet high. So I had called this ex-boyfriend of mine, J-Rod, he would come pick me up if I was in a good place or a bad place, any place. If I said, I need you to come get me, he would come get me. It was crazy. He drove like an hour to come get me this night. And I said, listen, I told him what I was doing, that I was escaping. And I said, you're going to see the front door, look to your left. You're going to see a fence. You're going to see me come. So, but we planned it, so he needed to be there right at 10 for the cigarette break. So I called right before I went out, and he was out there, and I said, look to your left, you see? And he's like, yeah. And I said, okay. So they hand me my cigarette, and I step out onto the porch, and I'm just looking at the fence, and I can see Jared's car, and someone said, are you okay? And I just went for the fence. And I start climbing the fence. And this guy, Bob, the nurse that took us out for our cigarettes, and he goes, what are you doing? What are you doing? And I go, Bob, what are you doing? What are you doing? As I'm climbing up the fence. And then he stopped. Like, what do you mean? What am I? What do you mean? So he goes, you're never going to get out of here. You're never going to get out of the yard. I jump over into the yard, and no joking, J-Rob pulls up onto the grass, and the passenger door flies open. Oh yeah, Bob? So I knew I was listed as a missing person, because that's bad. That's a lockdown facility, and the doctor did not think I was ready to leave. He, in fact, felt very much the opposite. Sorry about my dog's noises, guys, but this is a good one. Anyway, so I blinked out. Anyway, so I knew I would be looked for, and I knew my mom would be on the hunt and helping authorities find me. So then we go back to Brockton, where I'm from, where I was still homeless. We go back to being homeless, and we're in my friend. It was actually, was it Willie's house? I don't know, that's weird. Why would I be hanging out with him right after? Anyway, nothing made sense back then. So my youngest son's father says, come on, let's go. That's who I was running with at the time. He says, come on, let's go. Let's go see what's going on downtown. And I'm like, no, I'm listed as a missing person. They're looking for me. He's like, oh my God, you really think you're that big a deal? Shut up. Come on. We go down onto Main Street. It's like a couple blocks to get down to Main Street. We take a right, and we get about a block and a half before all of a sudden there's cruisers, there's state troopers, there's an ambulance, there's a fire truck. Oh, pull over and corner me. And he just keeps walking like, whatever, just... And, but I said I refused to go back to that hospital, and I never saw that psychiatrist again.